Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we're going to talk about the brand new, absolutely massive, 500-page, $100, The Making of Original Dungeons & Dragons, 1970 to 1977. It is part of the 50th year celebration, the 5-decade celebration of Dungeons & Dragons, and it is a book that has been printed specifically to commemorate Dungeons & Dragons first edition. Now, they call it the original Dungeons & Dragons, but I think it's just Dungeons & Dragons 1E, and that's how I'm going to refer to it in my thoughts on this book. So I have had a chance to read this, and I'm going to give you my takeaways. So first of all, this is an astonishing book. It is exceptionally expensive. It is $100. I think that's a perfectly fine asking price for the book. I do think it's worth it. I think the number of people who are going to be interested in this are fairly low, right? So what is this book and what does it serve as first? So the first thing is this is a complete printing of Dungeons & Dragons first edition, right? And I'm talking like, if you want to play what Gary Gygax originally put down in 1974 with everything that was printed, all the expansions that were printed for it in that, super crusty, like what happened right after Chainmail, right? Like before the D&D canon hardbacks, right? You could play all of D&D first edition with this book, and you could play it in its original format because it's printed perfectly. Everything's there. It's a complete collection of Dungeons & Dragons first edition in its original form. Okay, now what is the purpose of that? Well, the purpose of that, in my humble opinion, is to fully establish forever the Dungeons & Dragons Lord of the Rings set. Right, the dungeon, and I think that's the thing. So I called it, actually, I guess, and this is the issue: is what is its true name? What is this edition's true name? Right? I think its true name, in my humble opinion, is the Dungeons & Dragons Tolkien edition. Right? And if you read this edition, it has Hobbit and Balrog printed right in it. Okay, and it is being printed with Hasbro's permission, with Wizards of the Coast permission, with full knowledge from the Tolkien estate. This was publicly stated, right? And Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast have full communication with the Tolkien estate at this point because they're sending them checks for millions of dollars every month, right? And when did that start? That started in 2023 with the Magic the Gathering Lord of the Rings set. So Dungeons & Dragons doesn't make enough money to pay the Tolkien estate, right? But in my humble opinion, right? But in my humble opinion, Magic the Gathering did, right? And so basically, if you read this book, The Making of Original Dungeons & Dragons, 1970 to 1977, it fully documents that Gary Gygax fully intended Dungeons & Dragons to be completely compatible and completely used to run Lord of the Rings. Hobbits are there, Balrogs are there, and because Hobbits are there or Balrogs are there, you know why it's humans, dwarves, and elves, right? It's Tolkien's humans, dwarves, and elves. It's all right there, right? So really, D&D 1E is really D&D Tolkien E, in my opinion. Dungeons & Dragons Tolkien Edition is first edition. And now it's been perfectly printed in a completely playable form, right? So you get this big 500-page book, and you have everything you need to play Dungeons & Dragons Tolkien Edition, in my humble opinion, right? Now, this is astonishing because this is truly intellectual property history in the making. In 1974, this was a crime when it was done, right? And Gygax had to stop it because, like, the Tolkien estate, the Tolkien industry was like, hey, you can't just take our stuff, man. And so he stopped, right? But they were not upset with it being printed. They were upset with it being printed without them being paid, right? In my humble opinion. And now in 2024, 5 decades later, they're like, it's totally fine for you to completely admit that Dungeons and Dragons was always systematized Tolkien, right? You just gotta pay us, right? And it doesn't matter to us if that money comes from Dungeons and Dragons or if it comes from Magic the Gathering. And the reason it doesn't matter to us is Magic the Gathering is canon to Dungeons and Dragons, right? Strixhaven, Theros, Ravnica, Dominaria, list goes on and on and on and on and on, right? Baldur's Gate, right? Yeah. Adventures in Forgotten Realms, Magic the Gathering, D&D, seamless canon across the board, right? Incredible, right? So this book, and I'm talking about this now because they announced this a year ago, right? But I've seen it with my own eyes. Like it is real. It is 100% real, right? And it is astonishing, right? So it is really, really fascinating exactly what has been established with the making of original Dungeons and Dragons 1970 to 1977, which in my humble opinion really should have been called the making of the Dungeons and Dragons Tolkien edition, which is now fully playable in a gorgeous 100-page canon hardback, right? And it's fantastic. It is absolutely stunning. And I think there are people who think it's like some kind of history book. It's not. It's just another, it's the D&D Tolkien edition printed so it can be played, in my humble opinion. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.